Jimmy Butler addressed the reports regarding a potential trade, but did we get any real clarity on the situation? WQAM's Alex Solana joins us to break down the latest news on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode, sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Alex Solana is also here today as we keep adding to this Jimmy Butler story. He's the host of the Heat's pre- and post-game show, so you know his voice from over there. You also know him as the executive producer of the Hotch and Crowder show on WQAM. We're so happy to have you on. Welcome back to the show, man.
Yeah, man. Always enjoy being here, especially given the circumstances. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's just jump right into it because we all know what we're going to be here talking about. Jimmy Butler, amid the trade speculation, reports that the Miami Heat are open to listening to offers for him, spoke to the media after Wednesday's practice. He was asked directly about those trade rumors, and he actually said that he liked it. Take a listen.
I actually like it. It's good to be talked about. I don't think there's a such thing as like bad publicity to a point. But you know, somebody talk about me getting traded, that's a lot.
Where do you stand as far as long-term future, hopefully otherwise, with the Miami?
Who knows?
Who knows, says Jimmy Butler. Alex, we'll start with you. Does that sound like somebody who thinks that he'll be in Miami at the end of the season?
It sounds like somebody who, I know this isn't going to be like the take people want to hear, but it probably sounds like somebody who genuinely doesn't know. And I don't think these reports necessarily change that. Had, you know, you put Jimmy in a lie detector test at the start of the season, and you would have asked him, hey, will you be here April 13th or April 9th, the Heat's final regular season game on Sunday at 1 p.m.? I think his answer would have been, I don't know, you know? So I really don't think these reports change anything. And by the way, I heard both of your conversations yesterday on Locked On about this. So I think we're kind of on the same page. And I apologize if I'm not bringing like a totally different perspective. But Jimmy Butler, we've seen him go absolutely crazy in the media and with a front office. Like if he wanted out, we would know he wanted out. Yesterday, that report gets leaked. He doesn't walk away after practice without getting in front of a camera and saying, Pat Riley, trade my ass. Mm-hmm. So I think because yesterday didn't speak to the media, which is typical with Jimmy Butler, he doesn't usually do post-media veils after he practices. Like, it's not a common thing. I shouldn't say it's unusual. People see that and they say, Jimmy's avoiding the media. This must mean something's brewing. And I just don't feel that way. So I think it sounds like somebody who genuinely doesn't know. Like, what are the Heat going to do? How are they feeling? We know how Pat Riley felt before the season. Are we really buying into a 3-game sample size here of them looking incredible or a smaller sample size of this starting lineup looking incredible? I don't think anybody truthfully knows.
David, what do you think?
I think it's pretty similarly. I think the ball kind of seems squarely in Pat Riley in the front office's court. Like they have control over the situation. I think this is different than what we saw from him in Philadelphia, different from we saw him in Chicago or Minnesota. This is not a player trying to force his way out. If he had his druthers, I think his preference would be to get paid a hell of a lot of money, stay in Miami, keep his family here, and enjoy the life that he's been living over the past 6 seasons. And I don't know that that's realistic. And so I think that's where the crux of the conflict is that he's not going to get all of those things. He doesn't get to decide that. And so it's up to Riley to kind of make that choice and determine, look, we tried to negotiate something with your agent, Bernie Lee. You want the max? We're not giving you the max. And this is just me reading between the lines, but I think based on what, we've seen from Bernie Lee and the comments and the reports from Shams just yesterday, and we see Jimmy's reaction. And look, he's playful. He likes teasing the media. We know that for people who are watching this on YouTube, obviously you can see that kind of smirk, tongue-in-cheek expression that he's got there. But I think he kind of he knows that something is happening, something is brewing, and yet he's not in control of it. He is not, as Alex said, dictating things. He's not demanding a trade. He's just not going to be able to call the shots the way he did in other locations. And so that's where the awkwardness comes in, because who knows? Who knows what could happen? If somebody gets a deal that makes sense to Miami and the front office, they'll take it. And that's just the reality.
Yeah, I mean, like we said on yesterday's show, David, it's like he used to be a guy where you just hung up the phone. He's not the guy where you just hang up the phone anymore. Sometimes there's guys who are superstars, but you got to listen. And Jimmy Butler in Miami has been treated like a superstar. He's mostly been paid like a superstar. I don't think he wants to leave Miami either. I mean, heck, I don't really know how opening up a brick and mortar business works and how long the ramp up is to that, but I don't imagine that you open up a big faced coffee, in the design district and if you were trying to get out of here. But for the first time in Jimmy's career, I mean, not the first time necessarily, because this is what happened when he left Chicago, but he's not in control. And like David, you just said, like, okay, you could stay in Miami. You're going to get paid a whole lot less money. I know you keep saying that you don't care about money, but we all know that that's BS. Like, who doesn't care? Like, I'm not even like accusing him of anything, but it's like, whatever. Right. Like, so, okay, you're not going to get the max contract, but you can stay in Miami, or maybe you can go somewhere else and get that max contract. So those are kind of the things that he's going to have to decide, or I guess maybe not, since I guess it does not feel like it's in his control anymore. It's kind of up to the Heat to do what's best for the Heat. And as tough as it might be to see Jimmy Butler walk away, Pat Riley can't think like that. He can't think emotionally. He has to think about what's best for the organization. Alex, it looked like you wanted to say something there. You want to jump in? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to point out that, people scroll through social media. That's how everybody gets their info nowadays. And I'm guilty of it as well. And you see the tweet, Jimmy Butler, when asked if he wants to be in Miami, quote, "Who knows?" Right? Like, no context. And we see the video, and we know how Jimmy is with the media. We have that luxury, obviously, but I think most people know he's always very coy and
right. That's why I included the video here. I wanted people to see it. Yeah.
Right. And today, so I'm doing the Hawk and Crowder show, and at 2 p.m., first thing they come on the air, they're like, "Oh, did you read Jimmy's quotes?" I say, hey, I have the audio here. Listen to the audio with me and tell me if this sounds like somebody who genuinely, as it reads or as it sounds, like, how do you feel about it? And I think there's an important delineation there between how are you reading the headline and how is Jimmy Butler actually saying this, given the context of how Jimmy Butler approaches his conversations with the media, and to the fact that Jimmy doesn't control this outcome anymore. That's how the NBA wants it, right? They tried to take some of the power back from the players. The fact that Jimmy Butler can't force his hand and say, "Hey, Heat, you're going to lose me this offseason if you don't either trade me or pay me, because I'll go sign with anybody else." Well, it doesn't work that way anymore because of the cap construct of the NBA right now. So there's only a certain amount of teams that can. So again, going back to, and you guys touched on this yesterday, it doesn't surprise me that this is being talked about now. I don't know for sure that it's coming from Bernie Lee. I don't know if this is Jimmy Butler. Like, I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling, a very good feeling, that it's not from the Heat. And that right now, Jimmy Butler just doesn't have any sort of control over what happens. And he understands that if the Heat aren't going to give him the extension, which right now feels like they're not, then he's going to have to opt in and not get to go title chase somewhere.
Would you give him the extension? Sorry, I just want to get your take. What would you give him the extension? Because we've debated it here, but maybe an outsider perspective. Yeah, how would you feel about what he gets paid, and how much do you think he is, quote unquote, deserving at this point?
I mean, ask me in April. Like, I know that's an easy out, and I'm sorry, but it is. It is. I know. But what if Jimmy Butler, and it's not likely. I realize this. I know it's not likely. This is me, Heat glasses on, culture glasses on, right? Like, but what if Jimmy Butler turns into playoff Jimmy again in April, May? Honestly, and Tyler Hero is playing at this level, and the Heat stay healthy. I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to win an NBA title, but it would still feel how it felt coming off of 2023 and how we all talked ourselves into before Kelly Oubre takes out Jimmy's knee, which is hey, it might click again in the playoffs. Like, who knows? So
Yeah.
I realize there's clearly a gap in talent between the Celtics and the Bucks and the teams that got better, the Knicks, right? Like, there's
Cavs.
clearly the Cavs, right? Like, there's an obvious gap between what those teams did and what the Heat did. But the Miami Heat are a stubborn franchise, and it usually works for them following this type of, I don't know if you want to call it a routine or just structure or process. And they like their guys, but at a certain point, like you're asking me, are they going to give them the extension or not? I think this specific year, the Heat are approaching it as, hey, this either works this year or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And
it
and I
feels
think
like a last
everybody
dance.
involved understands that.
Yeah,
Right.
it feels like a last dance, and I think that's why you have Jimmy saying, who knows, when asked if he is going to remain a member of the Miami Heat, because he genuinely doesn't. And look, to David's point, or to your point, and I think it was a great one, like, this is what the NBA wants, is for these super teams not to exist and for the players not to have all this empowerment and stuff. The unintended consequence of all of this was with the new CBA and this apron world that we live in, is that beloved superstars in their home markets have to get traded because of pure finances, and it's not for basketball reasons anymore. And that's the part that is really kind of hanging over the Heat. Like, if this first apron, second apron stuff wasn't a thing, it used to just be up to the owner to just be like, I'm just going to pay all these guys, and we'll go over the cap, and it'll be really expensive, and there's some luxury taxes, and that hurts, but it wasn't hurting enough. And it wasn't hurting like just the purse strings, but also before, it used to not hurt your roster building. Now there's like limitations that if you hit a certain, salary payroll, like, you literally can't do things with your roster. You start losing draft picks even if you have too high of a payroll, and so it becomes untenable. And I think this was like a real unfortunate consequence that the league put in. So hey, you wanted everybody to be even and all that. So I don't know. Congrats, I guess, NBA. But we're gonna keep the conversation moving here. Jimmy Butler may have already subtly told everybody where he stands with the Miami Heat. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time and their new feature, Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to your favorite events to see them live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals and great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's such an impulse buy. You want to go see this show, you want to go see that game. Guess what? Game Time Picks has you covered so you can make it easy and as affordable as possible with their all-in pricing feature. It shows you the total right up front. No surprise fees, no hidden anything. You know exactly what you're paying for the seats that you're going to get. And you can see those seats if you're in a new venue. Maybe you're not familiar with where you're going to be sitting. They've got their great seat views. It gives you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks, because download the Game Time app today, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply, but create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show is to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Before I get to one more thing that Jimmy Butler said here, another takeaway that I had from that initial clip there. He didn't do anything to quiet the rumors. I don't know that was his job either, because of everything we're talking about. This is not a guy who was reportedly asking to get traded and then it was up to him. I think he is very much in the lurch. And with all that considered, and I think maybe Chicago fans, Minnesota fans, and Philadelphia fans might roll their eyes about what I'm about to say here, but he's been an ultimate professional through all of this. He was called out by the president of the organization in front of the entire world saying, you don't do enough, shut the hell up, all this stuff. Never raised any flags, never sounded any alarms. Said this, got it leaked to the media. You know what? I'm just going to play this. I'm going to play out my contract. It's not going to work anymore. And there's some different circumstances. Philadelphia was off the board as a destination. Who knows what happens if Paul George resigns in LA or whatever. But was a professional then. Pat Riley challenged him also. I need you to play every single game. He's gone out there and played every game he could be a part of that he hasn't had a rolled ankle in. I think we can have issues with some of his performances. I think opening night was a major red flag. The game in Charlotte, evidently his back was bothering him. I don't know how long it was bothering him. There's been some bad performances, but in terms of like, hey, that's just basketball product. Guys have bad games. He's mostly been good. especially after a slow start to the season. He's been in stops, before where he was sort of in the lurch here. He kind of made it about himself, and he's very much not making it about himself right now. And that's just an observation I have. I don't really have a question to throw it to you guys, but if anybody has anything to respond to that, go ahead.
Also, the Heat, right? I mean, the Heat have the ability to come out and decline these reports. Well, they haven't. I find that interesting. I also find the fact that Jimmy's agent has been quiet throughout this entire process. Like, he doesn't have a comment. He has Twitter fingers. We all know that as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's why I don't believe that this was such a groundbreaking development, or that something happened to really maximize this, other than Shams needed to put out some news. But I don't think, going back to the fact that Jimmy has been very professional, I also don't think it's a surprise that the Heat's best stretch of games has come while Jimmy Butler's playing his best basketball of the season as well. So you're right. He's handled himself perfectly outside of showing up to media day late, which, I would like to believe his airplane from France actually was delayed. Like, I believe that.
I'm very excited for the Now You Tell Us story after, if Jimmy Butler gets traded, like what actually happened on media day. I would love like the investigative reporting on that.
Yeah.
Well, the other part that he said here, or really didn't say. So I'm wondering if Jimmy Butler really thinks that the Heat are a championship contender still. Because in the report, it said that Butler would be open to playing for a title contending team, that he also plans to opt out after the season. And so, okay, you're planning to opt out away from the Miami Heat. I don't know. When Jimmy Butler thinks he's got a chance to win a championship, he tends to tell you, right? He'll make a big, bold declaration, a big, bold prediction. And we haven't gotten those in training camp, at media day this season. It has very much been sort of a, we'll see, I believe in this team, blah, 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 but no big like Jimmy Butler declarations. Is that something worth reading into, David?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's tempered his expectations a little bit. Like, even in his comments, he says he wants to play, winning basketball. He wants to compete. Like, those were his words. It's all about competing. And when he was asked what matters in terms of whether or not the extension is what matters, it's like, no, my family matters. My well-being matters. My kids matter. I don't think. Okay. And I'm reading into this because we have no choice, because Jimmy's going to tell us one thing, and who knows how forthright he's being, and we're forthcoming, and he's being in these comments. So it's kind of difficult, other than to just kind of figure out, well, maybe this is what it means. To me, I read it as a person who's, like many of us, kind of recognize that the Heat window is probably closed. Does that mean he's going to stop playing at 100% when he can? No, I don't think that's the case at all. I just think that you recognize realistically that there is a lower ceiling on this team. And I don't think that's a bad perspective, because things can happen. I think if you had asked him honestly and truthfully a couple of years ago when they made their finals run, he probably would have assessed the team similarly.
No, that was my point. Like, in 2023, he was still saying it. In 2023, right. he knew, like, Evan, I don't know, maybe also, a broken clock is right, whatever. But sure. He was saying all year, hey, we're going to win the championship in 2023. He said that all year, and there's none of that now. And I would argue this team is better set up in the regular season than that team was. That team was in the play-in tournament. Yeah.
It's probably. Yeah. So I see him, and I think the time for that kind of a hyperbole is kind of in the past now. I don't see it. Maybe it's internal, and maybe we don't see those conversations behind the scenes. We don't see him in the practice floor or anything like that. Maybe it's just pointless at this point, because, he used to say it all the time, and it didn't translate into a title then either. So what's the point? What's the use? So
I'm sorry. I thought you were done, David. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Go for it.
Didn't the president say, "Hey, shut the hell up"? Like,
yeah,
and I know he's out there on the court, but look, would it surprise anybody? And I don't know this for sure, but would it surprise anybody if Jimmy and Pat aren't on the best of terms? I'm not saying that there's some sort of like, divide, and that they're not. I'm not suggesting that.
No, but I would be surprised, to your point, if they're grabbing a beer after these games. I don't think that that's happening either. Yeah,
correct. And I always like to go back to, in my head as a kid, I grew up during the D Wade era. I mean, I didn't know basketball without Dwayne Wade. He was drafted. I was in second grade. I grew up going to Heat games. Like, in my head, Dwayne Wade was the forefront of the Heat organization since 2003. And since Stan went to the rookie, I always had like this fantasy in my head as a kid, like, oh, Pat, Mickey, and D Wade are just the best of friends. And then that day, and I refused to believe that Dwayne Wade was going to leave Miami. I'm like, no, like Mickey and Pat will sit down with him, and come on, it's Dwayne Wade. You know, so it just goes to show, like, if D Wade could leave Miami, we have to just be real about these situations. Like, this is a business at the end of the day. I know it's a cliche, but does it surprise anybody that Jimmy perhaps didn't take that comment necessarily, you know, very happily? That's maybe there was some truth to it and he understood it, but now he's tempered his comments after games and he's no longer willing to kind of go the extra mile, you know? So it kind of, I don't read into it the same way you're reading into it, which is like Jimmy knows this team has reached its ceiling. I think all these dudes are just wired like total nut jobs. Like Jimmy Butler still believes he's the best player in the NBA. Bam Adebayo still believes that he can go dominate. You know what I mean? Like all these guys are just
Joel
wired
Embiid
that
thinks
way.
he's the best player in the NBA still.
Yeah, but they really do. You know, like the
no, I mean,
Mario
Embiid thinks
Chalmers
Jimmy
syndrome.
Butler's the best player in the NBA.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
All right. So, look, it does seem strange that this report is coming out amidst a 3-game win streak. Thinking about it more, it actually might be the perfect time for these reports to come out and make a big move. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, just $5, and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Sometimes you're watching a game and get a hunch right in the middle of it. You want to check out the latest stats, perhaps, or you want to view live play-by-play from other games? Well, you can do that and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. But only when you visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $100 and $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet, but only by visiting FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The Miami Heat take on the Toronto Raptors at home Thursday night. You can, of course, catch the pre- and post-game show with Alex Solana on the WQAM. Toronto's already struggling. They're without Scotty Barnes. Real chance that the Heat could extend this win streak to 4. And we're a little bit past the 20-game mark here, but I'm just going to throw it to you here, Solana. Where do you think the Heat stand at, quarter-ish mark of the season?
Yeah, I think since they made the change to the starting lineup, I mean, it's not a surprise, but I think they've looked better. Terry Rozier is just like, you really don't know what you're going to get with him. You also don't know what type of Terry Rozier you're going to get when he's out on the floor. Aside from the scoring, the other night, I mean, we saw Terry, I thought against Cleveland, like play a good all-around game. And he was, hustling for rebounds. He had that block where he just came like weak side. You just got a different style of Terry. And I think, since they made that switch and poor Nico is on the outside looking in, they do look like a better team. I think this was what I predicted for them, a 5 or 6 seed. I really believe that they were going to have a better regular season. It didn't start great, but yeah, they're probably not, in that conversation with the Clevelands and the Knicks and the Celtics consistently. Can they beat those teams? I mean, we know that they can. But yeah, I mean, I think where they are right now is where we should expect Miami to be. There's going to be some stretches like we've seen over the past couple games where they look really good. Can they keep that up? Can you rely on a Drew Smith or a Pella Larson to actually be consistent like this and give you those extra, huge minutes? Probably not. So I think this is where they're going to live, anywhere between the 5 to the 8 spot. And if Jimmy can continue to play games, and he's here, right? If there's no big trade, if he can continue to play games and they can stay healthy, then I don't think it's crazy that they're a 5 seed come playoff time.
David, what do you think? Because they're 2 games behind.
Was that David? David, was that a dumb take? I mean, you guys.
No.
I don't know.
I think it's spot on. I think it's spot on. That's why. No,
I was waiting for David to chime in there.
Sorry, no. Honestly, I had nothing to add to it because it's a spot on. Like it really is. I think they're a team that is capable of good things, but I don't know how sustainable it is. And I don't know that you can look at this group and say, you know what, they're definitely going to be a dominant team. I think they still have that flip, that switch to flip, and I think the expectation is that they can do it in the postseason. But during the course of the regular season, they're going to have some ups and downs, and I think they have found a recipe for success of late. And also, it just, to Alex's point, it just doesn't feel sustainable. But you're gonna be somewhere in that middle ground where you're going to be just good enough to beat bad teams. And I don't know whether or not you'll be lucky enough. And I think, partly there was some luck in that Cleveland game, certainly, that you're going to be lucky enough to beat the good teams. And so you're kind of navigating through the rest of the season in the hopes that you win just enough so that you can fall into that 5 through 8 spot.
Yeah, so they're 2 games behind the Knicks. Knicks are sitting at 4, 2.5 games behind Orlando at 3. Orlando just lost Franz Wagner, but they still look pretty good against Milwaukee.
Orlando's going to drop. Orlando's going to drop.
They'll probably
slide,
but they're already 2.5 games. That's not that big of a cushion, but it's a cushion nonetheless. Boston and Cleveland are running away with the conference, so there's no that they're going to finish 1-2 in whatever order. So yeah, I think 4, 5, 6. That's probably where Miami lands. And I still think if Orlando can get Paolo back within the next couple of weeks, they'll probably stave off the Heat right in the standings here. So yeah, if Miami just tops out at 5 or 6, because Milwaukee is right behind them and they're playing great ball too, who knows? The Heat also have like this bye week where Milwaukee actually has to play a bunch of extra games for no reason, part of this NBA Cup. Not for no reason, sorry, NBA. It's for the NBA Cup, obviously, and you get a small little banner if you win, just like the Lakers got last year. However, my point. I'm zooming. I think this team is better than they were last year, and I actually think that there's I don't know how
bar. That's a low bar.
Well, even with better than what they could have been last year had Jimmy Butler even been healthy. I didn't think that team had a chance in hell of making it a deep run in the playoffs. And I know David and we disagree on that, but that team didn't have it. This team, I think, has something more and has a higher ceiling than last year's team did. And that's why I would be a little reluctant to trade Jimmy Butler, is because I think this team can win a playoff series, depending on obviously the opponent and what happens, but I also need to see more. I need to see a larger sample. There has been some luck. The Lakers are in a lurch. The Suns were without Kevin Durant. Cleveland didn't have Evan Mobley for the second half. There's things, but I also think that there's stuff here that actually makes sense. The starting lineup makes intuitive sense. The defense is playing better. Jimmy is playing better. Bam is out of the shooting slump. Tyler Hero's having an all-star year. These are all real things that are happening regardless of what's going on with your opponent. So I want to see it more. And that's why, again, it seems so weird that this report came out this week, but you go across, I'm like, this is their bye week. This is the time where the team reflects. We hear it all the time. 20 games into the season, you stop and reflect and you reevaluate. And maybe the Heat have already seen enough and they said, you know what? We can tinker with the starting lineup all we want. We can do this and none of that. But we might be better than we were last year. We might agree with Wes. But we ain't better than Boston. We ain't better than Cleveland. We ain't better than New York. And we ain't better than Orlando. And we're probably not better than Milwaukee. So what are we really doing here? And maybe it's a good, maybe now is the time to trade Jimmy where you could sell high on him, because better to trade him now during a 3 or a 4 game win streak as opposed to when you've lost, 7 games in a row or something. What do you think about that, Solana?
Yeah, I also think, when you think about what Jimmy has meant to this franchise, there has to be an element here too, where it's tough to trade away your franchise player. I'm sorry. I know this is a business and we all grew up in the 2K era where you're trading whoever because you want 5 first-round draft picks, and it's easy for us to do it on social media and jump on the trade machine. It's hard, right, to pull a trigger on the face of your franchise, somebody who literally gave you one of the best eras of Heat basketball after losing LeBron and Chris Bosh and D Wade. Bro, that is hard. That is hard to do. We scoff at Pat Riley sometimes. Man, but to do that over 20 years, have 3 different title contenders, and then to just kind of just trade off the person most responsible for that can't be an easy decision from an organizational standpoint. Think of all the equity they have built in Jimmy Butler, jerseys, and just the fact that the fans love him. So it can't be an easy decision. But I think everybody understands they have to go on one of these insane runs again. The most unlikeliest of runs that they already pulled off once. Can they do it again? And to me, my hot take is that it all hinges on Duncan Robinson. Is Duncan giving you 20 a game?
Right.
Then all of a sudden everything Tyler's doing is great. Jimmy playing great. Awesome. Bam out of the shooting slump.
You would
Everything
need
you said.
this year's version of Caleb Martin. Like, who's going to play at an all-star level for 6 weeks, right?
Everything hinges on, like, is Duncan going to score 20 points and is Terry Rozier giving you 15 off the bench? And if that doesn't happen on a nightly basis, can you actually compete with these top-tier teams? And, like, is that a smart way to operate? I don't know. So
it's not. No, it flatly isn't. I mean, like I said all the time, like, hoping to be the one team to make it out of the play-in tournament and win the championship because it's never happened before in NBA history isn't a strategy. Like a tried and true strategy to win a championship in the NBA is to be a top 4 seed in your conference, be really good in the regular season, and be even better in the postseason.
Yeah.
That's been the formula literally the entire history of the league. Like, even when, like, and the Heat didn't prove anybody wrong, right? Like, they got to the finals and then lost. They didn't win a championship. So it's like, yeah, even the Heat haven't done it. They got close. It was fun, but
they're definitely better. They're definitely better than they were a year ago, David. Come on. Like,
yes.
I think so by a wide margin. I mean, last year, maybe not by a wide margin, but by a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, they're the same record that they were last year at this point in the season, right? I mean, and that was with injuries.
But they went on that 7-game win streak. And, like, if it wasn't for that 1 7-game win streak, you know, where things kind of looked better than they really were until they lost to Brooklyn, and then they had that 22 to 1.
Don't you wonder if we're doing that?
Chicago.
Is time repeating
sorry
itself?
to interrupt.
In the middle of what?
Sorry to interrupt, but breaking news from Shams Charania: the Phoenix Suns also interested in Jimmy Butler, according to Ernie Lee.
Oh my God! Wait. The Phoenix Suns. Wait, so all right, real quick. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm sorry, guys. Now I gotta ask you one more question on this. I'm pulling up the trade machine right now. What even makes sense here? Because neither team can take on more salary because of where they are against the apron. So they can't trade Kevin Durant or Bradley Beal. Okay. No, they can't do any of that. Right, they can't take. So. Well, no. This literally makes no sense. All right, cool, Shams. That's literally not happening. There's no way for this to happen. Like, unless you get,
it's because stirs the pot so much. It's so fun for him. Like, it's just, I mean, maybe the Suns are interested. It's like, yeah, it's like saying, oh, would we want to add Jimmy Butler? Sure, but it's not realistic. They can't do it.
I'm interested in having a Ferrari. It doesn't mean I can afford it.
Yeah. Is there a framework of a 3-team a 3-team?
That would have to be it.
Maybe?
So it would have to be Beal, Booker, or Durant coming back.
Right.
Jimmy going there. It would actually, either one of those things would save Phoenix a little bit of money, and then Miami finding a third team to take on a salary. So it's not impossible, but highly improbable. And if, like, Phoenix calls with Beal and the Heat say no thanks, that's not happening. They're not going to trade Devin Booker or Kevin Durant for Jimmy Butler unless they think Kevin Durant is on his way out, which nobody's gotten that indication. So I don't know.
Unless they're forcing their way out. I mean, why would Devin Booker do that? I don't think Kevin Durant is doing that, but it also wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world, given his track record.
Ooh, I like the Devin Booker thing. He's like, Devin Booker looked around and he's like, Jimmy Butler might be my lifeline.
Can we just unanimously say no on Bradley Beal? Like, we're all out. Yeah. We're done, right?
Out.
None of us want Bradley Beal. Okay.
We have a better Bradley Beal at home. His name is Tyler Hero. Thank you.
Yes.
Who's Devin Booker's agent?
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I can't
CAA.
Okay.
That doesn't mean anything for Miami.
Oh.
Interesting. All right. We're out of time here, so that's something we can talk about and carve into a little bit. But this is crazy. Just a lot more smoke around the Jimmy Butler situation. I guess we're going to continue to talk about this with Solana or not. But it was a pleasure to talk with you this time about it. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was what is Shams doing right now?
He's texting the front offices of every team. Are you interested in Jimmy Butler? Are you interested in Jimmy Butler?
What are we talking about here?
It's like, I can't say
he's trying to prove that he's better than Woj. Yeah, he's still competing against the shadow of Wojnarowski. It's kind of sad.
Thanks, guys. Seriously, hey, you guys are genuinely the best. So I appreciate coming on every time, but I do listen almost every single day. So I just wanted to say thank you. Yeah, you guys are the best, man. Seriously.
Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm just going to end it there.